I think there was this point in time in my life when I was sort of moving out of a full-time corporate career, and my son was very small. He was a year and a half. And that was the year when I also started the healthy baking community. The reason for starting the community essentially was emerging from the gap that I saw in terms of information when it came to healthy baking. Because as you know, when children are at that age, 1.5, 2 years old, they are exploring different kinds of food. They are also looking for things, usually reaching out for things which we consider unhealthy, like biscuits and cookies, stuff like that. So I looked around in my own, doing my own search online for recipes which would be healthy but could be baked. Didn't find too many which were in the Indian context, like stuff like ragi, for example. Ragi is a flour which is very indigenous, very local to our Indian subcontinent area, especially in southern India. It's a staple food. It's the first food for children, in fact. It's very nutritious. But you'll not find a lot of stuff that's baked in ragi. Now you do, but I'm talking about 2014, which is 11 years ago. So that was the genesis of Oh Wonderful. I started experimenting with those ingredients for myself, for my child. Carving the niche took a little while because it requires us to not get swayed by multiple opinions. That's one. Second, not get swayed by numbers that are driven by the social media. A lot of times, even with the community, the OMBC community that I have now, which is the healthy baking community, I would get a lot of requests, and people would tell me suggestions that it's a healthy baking group. Why don't you not make it a healthy food group? Widen the scope of the group. It's right now very, very particular, very niche. Make it a healthy food group, and you'll have so many more members. Okay, and I stood firm on the idea that no, I don't care whether there's the number of people in my community or going to my blog or following me on any kind of social media platform, if that was never a driver. Okay, so I felt that the idea was to remain very, very niche. So I say this many times, that I didn't intend to grow it so big. I mean, I'm not saying that I didn't want it to grow. I'm just saying it was not planned. It was not something that I thought as, okay, this is what it's going to be. These are the numbers we are going to look at. This is how big it will be. And it's only just by chance that I realized that we were that big. But it had all happened by word of mouth. So a lot of effort that goes in the back end, we don't always notice it. But I think over the years, all of the small and big things that I was doing, other members who then joined and started contributing, made it a global community, which now people know. The vision for the group essentially was healthy baking, but we transitioned into using that theme of healthy baking into social impact, and that sort also resonated with me, because even before I started Oh Wonderful, I was already using baking for social impact individually. It seemed like a logical, vision to translate into the group as well. And it just started with a very, very simple question when the group completed a year in 2015, saying that, we've completed a year, how should we celebrate? And if everybody agrees, then shall we do it with baking healthy bakes and giving it to people who are less fortunate than us. Just very simple, and the definition of less fortunate was very open-ended. Okay, so it saw tremendous response in the first day itself from across the world. Actually, I also didn't know there were bakers in other parts till that initiative happened in the first year, and that I think also set the sort of resonating theme that has made the group a global name over the last 10 years, 11 years now. So I think trust, engagement, and sustaining momentum, 3 very, very important things when it comes to virtual communities. I think the trust has emerged from being honest and transparent myself, and I've seen that with all the other bakers also, who sort of replicated, shared the same value system. And when I say that being transparent means just because I'm the founder of the community, I've never tried to position myself as a person who knows everything. When I talk about engagement, over the years again, whether it is from a knowledge sharing point of view, the kind of interactions we've had in the community virtually, you're trying to best leverage whatever technology we've had. That's one part of the engagement. So that's actively done. The other part of the engagement emerged from getting together for a common purpose. So I think that fact that everybody, see, I realized in my journey, wonderful, that everybody, at least by and large, most people, majority, let's say the majority of the people want to do something good. They just don't know how. Okay, you give them a cause, you explain that let's do this together. This is what we're working towards, and you'll see so many people join. I've seen that the more we do, the more you want to do. Okay? Because you come back with a lot more within yourself than what you've given. You may have given something in a material context, like bakes or fundraised or bought something or taught something, through a social impact initiative. But you come back feeling so fulfilled, and the fact that you're part of something meaningful. So I think that has also led to its sustainability. Right. So we've done this in three. We've got three pillars through which, or foundations through which we've sort of categorized social impact work. It's again naturally emerged. So if there's a fourth one that emerges in the next few years, I'm sure we'll all be very excited for it. But at this point in time, the first is direct distribution. So what we bake for our families, we go out and distribute, whether it's an occasion, whether it's on a regular basis, whether it's through say celebrations on particular festivals, or even just like a regular distribution in an Anganwadi. So anything like that, even on the streets, just a mass large-scale distribution across cities and countries on a planned day or days. The second is fundraising. So we've done fundraising individually. Also, we've also done it in partnership with crowdfunding platforms like Milap. We've done it with corporate entities who've invited us to their offices as part of their CSR initiatives, given us space to raise funds through selling to their employees. And we've then contributed those funds 100% to the NGO or the causes that we've identified. The third one, which has been very powerful, and I think that's also what I'd like to talk about from an initiative point of view, is when we move towards teaching women from very vulnerable situations. They've been rescued from human trafficking in terms of by the government of Karnataka and the Freedom Project India. And then they were rehabilitated. So the idea was to make them financially independent. So we had this project called the Project Vidyasthri. Okay, and through that we've trained many of these women on healthy baking. We've gone to the government shelter home where we got space to train them. Some of them had massive trauma from the past. We were up against some challenges because we'd never worked with women from those backgrounds. It required a lot of our personal resilience to come through. So not just the knowledge part of it, but the Freedom Project India team, the government, the kind of support we got was excellent. So I think the important thing is that a lot of times we jump into an initiative or a business idea without planning enough. So I think the first thing is, and I think maybe this emerges from the fact that I did my master's in business administration. So that thought process, that ability to use business planning was already there. But I think we don't often create even a business plan when we get into something like this, because we think it's going to be informal. See, we also trivialize the idea in our mind. We think it's informal, we're going to do it from home, it's just food, but the fact is that if you want it to ever scale up and you have a vision for it to become something larger than what it currently is probably, then you should have a business plan in place. I think putting a business plan in place in terms of what are the things that you want to do on a year-on-year basis or even monthly basis, where are your costs emerging from, what is your pricing strategy, what is your target audience, what are the kind of stakeholders, what are the kind of partnerships that you're going to look at, what kind of branding or marketing you're going to do. So all of that forms a very large part of your planning process. The other thing is, I think there is very less awareness for women about what is available to them financially. So I think, whether it's loans, whether it is guidance, financial counseling, the financial instruments that can support their business, maybe even financial mentoring, mentors who can guide them through how do you make this profitable. So I think how you can use communities is essentially by by first understanding how you are part of some of the communities. Okay, what you can gain from the community is exactly what you're going to give back. So when you have knowledge, right? So being transparent with your knowledge. See, when I think a lot of times we are so hesitant to share knowledge because we think it's going to affect our business, especially in a business like this. Everything becomes a trade secret. If you're going into a community, you understand what is your contribution to the community and also learn from each other. So learning from each other is the biggest strength that a community brings. The other way to use a community is to tap into the process of, like I earlier referred to, mentors or people who may be experienced, may have expertise in certain areas, and therefore through a community you are able to access them. The building the community part, so virtual communities I think were a lot easier to build 10-11 years ago. I wouldn't say it's difficult now, but I think what's happened is, if you're building a community virtually at this point in time, you definitely need to know that what is your differentiator. You cannot be another group of, say, women entrepreneurs. I'm just saying, just giving an example, because there's so many, right? So what is it that differentiates your community from the other communities? The day you identify that uniqueness that your community brings to the table, that is the first part, the purpose that you have. The second is, don't when you want to build a community, again my suggestion would be, don't get driven by numbers and don't get disheartened by numbers either. Okay, it will happen organically, and you don't need 500 unresponsive people. You need 50 responsive, connected people. That's the way a community should operate, as per me. That's been my philosophy. It's worked well for me. Juggling is never easy, right? So I think we are always struggling to find a balance. But I think that's what is probably our biggest challenge. No 2 days will look the same. Okay, and so finding a balance which worked today, in terms of how it will work tomorrow, is difficult. So I would suggest, I think for people who are juggling, women who are juggling multiple roles, while it's important to give ample amount of time to all of those roles, there's only one person, that's you, right? So try to see, that firstly, if it's realistic to give the same amount of time to each of those roles on a regular basis or not. Okay? If it works, great. If it's not working out for you, then try to prioritize and see how much time does actually each of those roles need. See, sometimes we in our mind think, oh, this will take up a lot of time. When we actually do it, we realize, okay, this took only 15-20 minutes of my time. So realistically identify how much effort and time is needed from in each of those roles, and then try and see if there are time windows. So sometimes, like I said, in certain parts of the day, you might want to focus on, say, your corporate role. An hour in the night, you might want to focus on your role as a creator, or you might spend a lot of time on the weekend trying to work as a change maker, set up some things. So now we have a lot of tools also, right? You can schedule so many things. You can plan in advance. Coconut sugar. I am very fond of coconut sugar. So compassion. That it will grow so big. If I knew, I would have planned better.